that photograph at the bottom, and that's the reason why. The photograph on the top is fine, but the photograph on the bottom. So maybe when it's his turn, he will tell us about that photograph, because I know he remembers. Only one person in this room has the right to contest anything that SMG does, and that is Milind in the front row, which he has already done. But a word about Amrit, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for the number of years I've lost track of. We often say about people that they've got a ringside view of Indian cricket. Some of us have been given that title as well. We've been on the fringes. Here's someone who was actually in the middle of some path-breaking things that were happening in our cricket, but you'd never know. There was no grandstanding. There was no, I was there, I know it all. There were no scoops leaked somewhere. It was all done with the dignity of the times. And that is why a lot of us, when Amrit said, I've done a book, we said, I don't care where it is we are coming. Because there was always a certain amount of class associated with Amrit. He's even starting to look like one of our idols, Tiger. Amrit's been part of history, but the one tour that I really do want to talk to him about was one that I was on as a pretty young person myself, working my backside off, but I don't think I did anywhere near as close as Amrit did. 36. Amrit, did I get the year right? 36 when India went to South Africa in 1992? Less? You look less. 36 for a young man on a tour where many things could have gone wrong. This was a tour where Indians didn't have visas before going. We didn't have diplomatic ties for a long time, didn't have even at the time at which we landed. And then to negotiate everything that was happening, walking a political tightrope, playing a difficult cricket series was I thought, an astounding job. Then 2004, then Pilcom. Actually, I think we don't write enough history in India ourselves. I think I'm culpable in that as well, but we don't write enough history. Amrit hasn't written the history. It's not his style to write history. He's just dropped us little teasers here and there in his style. And I purposely spoke ye aise hua in Hindi because long before English became very prolific, Amrit had this habit in his newspaper columns of dropping the right Hindi word to explain exactly what he wanted to say. So he's given us a little glimpse of all that he had a ringside view of in all these years, and we're going to talk to him about all that, along with someone who didn't have to have a ringside view because he was actually making it himself. So it's good to have someone with a ringside view of history and someone who was writing history, making history, with shots that other than Milind, everyone is going to gawk over. SMG, all yours. Oh, sorry, Amrit first, because Sachin's going to get something for SMG first. Sachin, have you got the Parle-Ji?
Thanks, Akshay. And Sunny is the opener, but I'm getting a chance to go ahead of him today. At the CCI, it's great to be here. And one always feels the presence of Raj Singh Ji here. You walk in and the first thing you remember is Raj Singh Ji, Rajbhai. What an outstanding, passionate ambassador of Indian cricket. And you can't come here and not remember him. What other memory I have of the CCI is, I saw a film called Love Marriage. Devanand was a cricketer. He made a big score at the CCI. And after a while, he goes to the heroine Bala Sinha, declares himself out and says, Mera dil leg before ho gaya. So that was the first instance of a batsman happily agreeing to an LB decision. Yeah. So I think Devanand is responsible for upholding the spirit of the game. So tribute to him. Anyway, more seriously, it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have Sunny here. And we know about his brilliance and his mastery. And I put those photographs there because all you have to explain or say about Sunny is there. That is perfection, that is poetry, that is art and science. So Sunny, fantastic. I think Sunny made 10,122 runs, and with each run, respect for Indian cricket grew. You know, he gave India the respect, and that reflected in the runs he made. It said that in those days, you know, Indian cricket and batting was not at its best. there was much of what was called Dhundo Dhundo Re Sajna. This is the term Sunny uses himself while batting. But Sunny had a bat which had only a middle. So phenomenal. Thank you very much, sir, for coming here and launching the book. Harsha also. Harsha said we go back a long way. Yes, we do. We crossed our paths, I think, early 92 in Australia, then in South Africa. But actually much before that. I was Secretary of Railway Sports and we were inaugurating a new hockey stadium in Gwalior. And we needed some help with the sponsorship. So we approached Sunny as PNG to find us a sponsor, which he did. Then he deputed a young executive, Varsha Bogle, to come to Gwalior to make sure everything was all right. This was, I think, late 1980s. Yeah, that was the inauguration of the hockey stadium at Gwalior because of Mr. Sandhya, and Harsha was there. So I think we go back a long way. More seriously, the book is about my association with Indian cricket. And this association happened by accident. It was not supposed to be. I was a young officer, Mr. Sindha was the railway minister, I got to know him. And he sort of opened the door for me, he put me in a position which gave me access to the BCCI. He effectively gave me a cricket credit card with lifelong validity, which I'm still using. And he was an extraordinary man, very generous, very supportive. And I'm grateful that he found me worthy of his trust for such a long time. So I owe a lot to him, and my entire sort of association connect with cricket is entirely because of him. This book is not about, it's not my story. It's not even the story of Indian cricket. It is the story of what I saw myself, what I participated in as an observer, and it's a first-hand accurate account. So it's not what somebody told me over the bar or over a drink or something. It's actually what I saw, and I met people, what I remember, I wrote it down. It was difficult to start writing a book, and I was very skeptical. Koi padhega, who is interested in me? I have no jaan to give. I have no breaking news or scandal to reveal. There is no message that the nation wants to know from me. So lots of doubts. But later I realized that I have been fortunate to be in a position where I have seen things. I have seen many iconic moments of Indian cricket. I saw, for instance, there was a book launched in 1984, Idols, in Delhi, little after your Kanpur game, where that was not your best test match. But I remember that book launch where Lloyd at, I think, Prakriti Madhan, Delhi said, Sunny's had a bad game, but Sunny's a master, who knows what happens in Delhi. And sure enough, in Delhi, 2900 of Sunny, 100 made in, I think, 96 balls. So that's how, sorry, 92, sorry, plus 32 So, that's how it is. You have a very ordinary game at Kanpur. Lloyd says, Sunny is the champion. And true enough, 2 days later, that phenomenal innings. I also saw him at Bangalore, his last game. And that's one of the mysteries of Indian cricket, what happened at 96. Did he actually nick Tossi? Iqbal Qasim. Did you actually nick Iqbal Qasim in 96? He's not telling after all these years. Well, I asked Imran Khan what happened. And actually, you should read this in the book, and I should not say it. But Imran said he was not out. So that's on record. He said he was not out. But that was epic inning. 96, when I think the team made 200. And that was a strange game because Salim Jafar picked as a pace bowler, didn't bowl a single ball in 2 innings. Imran didn't bowl in 1 innings. I think Kapil bowled 5 overs or something. And strange game, everybody went home with the wicket, not Mr. Gavaskar, who made 96. And another thing which I'm sort of grateful to Sunny for is, in 1987, I was a young journalist looking for some assignments to cover the World Cup in Pakistan. So I again approached PNG, Pinru Kam Dilao, West Dilao, to fund my trip. So he fixed up that I will write Imran's columns. I'll ghost Imran's columns to Pakistan. Now, Imran in those days in Pakistan was the most popular and powerful man. You couldn't approach and find Imran Khan here. But anyway, the first game was in Hyderabad Singh. I reached there, Imran is in the middle of 500 people at practice. I introduced myself, I have come and I am supposed to write your columns. Sunny must have spoken to you. He said, हाँ, Sunny ने बात करी थी, हाँ, करना है. So I said, okay, we'll decide the time. Just as I was leaving, he shouted in a voice which could be heard, I think, even in Lahore. मेरे को पैसे कितने मिल रहे हैं? I said, please ask Sunny about that. So that's some of the things about Sunny. I've also been lucky to be at some important moments of Indian cricket. For instance, Harsha mentioned the 1992 tour. First time Sachin was declared run out in Durban through a television replay. Also in 2002 in NatWest final, when Saurav did what he did, and which has been inspiring Salman Khan ever since. So, and also 2004 Multan, Viru made that 300. So I've been fortunate, I've been around some important times, so I decided to write. But a book is a mixture of, a lot of it is written as a tour diary. What happens on a tour, what happens on a day-to-day basis, on a match-to-match basis, what happens off-field. For instance, who sits where in a team bus? Does Sachin have an assigned place? How does Sachin choose his corner in the dressing room? What kind of fines are imposed for coming late? I think Sanjay is here. Sanjay Bhagat, around? Yeah. So I think Sanjay had the duty on one of the tours to collect fines. So he was the appointed वसूल करने वाला आदमी. कि जो late आएगा कैसे Sanjay collect करेगा. So there is stuff like that. There is some information about table tennis tournaments in the team room, putting competitions and the corridors of the hotel. But there's also some serious stuff. For instance, the team meeting हो रही है. So there will be a discussion on what line to bowl to Inzamam, whether the final leg should be fine or square. Also, whether cap should stand close at short cover or mid wicket. Also, a simple thing like how do you choose a ball when you go into field? The umpire comes and drops 12 balls on your dressing room, and you select one. So there's a process how you select a ball. So there is technical stuff in the book, and there is this so-called trivia in the book, and I think some of it will be interesting. I found it very interesting, and it was quite fascinating to sit through a team meeting with professionals discussing, details of how to approach a game, strategy, etc. And I would be an observer, keep silent. I think John Wright, who was manager on most of the tours, used to play a prank on me. After the meeting and the end, he said, Amrit, do you have something to say? So, hoping I'll say something stupid in the middle of a technical discussion among experts. But I was not so stupid, I kept my mouth shut and just heard what was happening. And more important, I made notes. So the tour diaries have been written not from memory, but from the notes I kept. For instance, when you go for a team dinner, so how do you pay? Who pays? And how do you decide? So occasionally it is you borrow Sachin Tendulkar's card, you pay on using it, and then you split it later. So I think there's a bit of this and a bit of that. And in the end, there are also certain profiles of eminent players and administrators whom I've had opportunity to interact with. But again, it's a personalized account. So if I'm writing about Sunny, if I'm writing about Tiger, it's not about Sunny the player or Sachin the player or Tiger the captain. It's about my personal experience, what I've learned and what's happened between them and me. For instance, just to give an example about Tiger. Tiger was a very reluctant person when it came to attending a function like this. If you asked him, his first reaction would be, कि किसी तरह से बचो इससे. If he had to go, he'd agree very reluctantly and set 2 ground rules. One, only half an hour. So quickly in, quickly out. Next, no speech. तो अगर ये 2 conditions मंजूर हैं, फिर तो मैं आऊँगा, नहीं तो नहीं. Anyway, I think I've been fortunate to be given this opportunity. It's been very rewarding. And as I said, it was not meant to be. It was an accident. I consider myself a concussion substitute. वो किसी वजह से मौका मिल गया. And I even landed up at times in what is called close catching positions. So thank you very much. I hope whoever reads it enjoys it. And we'll have a chat.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for being here. I think it's going to be a tremendous evening for the simple reason that what Amrit just told you is just what you would call the tip of the iceberg as far as cricketing experiences, cricketing stories, cricketing anecdotes are all about. And I think that is what you look for in a book. You don't want to know about career stats so much. You want to know what happened and how it happened, why it happened, and I think that's going to be part of the book. I've read a little bit of the book, not the whole book as yet. But going back many years ago, I think maybe about 40 odd years ago, when I first heard the name of Amrit Mathur, it was under a headline in a magazine, if I get the name of the magazine right, magazine called Onlooker, and the headline was Captain Outrageous. Now, Captain Outrageous was referring to me as the captain of the Indian team in Australia, where in the Sydney Test, which we lost. And as captain, having won the toss, I opted to bat, and we were skittled out for not too many, and then the Australians scored runs, etc. But of course, why was I called Captain Outrageous is because I opted to bat on what was, according to many sources, including the one mentioned earlier on over here, as being pretty knowledgeable about the game, who was at that particular point of time doing commentary for the All India Radio. He had come in to do commentary for All India Radio, and he must have called perhaps at that time, it was about 10 o'clock, 10:30 in the morning in Sydney for the game to start. He would have probably called England, called his friend Colin, and said, "Hello, Sunil has won the toss and he has opted to bat. So what do you think?" And Colin must have been busy, must have been fast asleep, and he said, "Oh, no, that's not correct." And so that was taken by this particular gentleman who Amrit spoke very glowingly about at the start of his speech. That was then used by him in the All India radio commentary to suggest that the pitch was damp, etc., etc. I don't even know whether he had gone to the pitch to have a look whether the pitch was damp or not. It was the first day of a test match, and of course in those days, you have a little bit of grass on the surface, and those were the days when you didn't have a cook over a ball, the ball moved around a little bit. So that, and I'm saying to myself, this Amrit Mathur, I then found out he hadn't actually been anywhere in Australia at that stage. I said, he's sitting in New Delhi, and he's writing this, and of course later on, you come to know that headlines are not in the hands of the person who writes a column, but it is the publisher or the editor who decides on the headline. But that was my first introduction to Amrit Mathur. It wasn't the most pleasant of introductions. I was waiting to catch up with him at some stage, but of course, I think what you would have noticed over your interaction with him is he's got a pretty disarming way about him, and so we hit it off, and we've been good friends ever since. When the invitation came, the invitation said for the release of the book, and I was actually relieved to read that word release, despite the fact that in his talk just now, a little before me, he used the word launching the book. Now, the book has already been launched in New Delhi. There was another one in Bengaluru a week, 10 days ago. And thankfully, while he used the word launch, it was in the invitation that went to everybody, the word used was release. Because if he had used the word launch in that invitation card, I would have had to say that you had more launches than ISRO has had. So there was a book, I remember Clive Lloyd releasing many years ago, which again, it was a launch, and that was about the 6th or the 7th launch in different cities, and actually that's where I actually am picking that up from, where he actually said, hello, you had more launches than in Cape Canaveral in USA. But you almost got there. Today, it's the 3rd launch, and I believe you're having a launch stroke release in Kolkata. But I think it'll be worth it. Worth it because I think it makes sense. Makes sense to be able to go to different cities, to be able to get people to tell and to read about the experiences, because this is something which not everybody is fortunate to do, to be able to be, in the middle of the action, in the sense that you're there in the change room, you're seeing people react to situations, you're seeing people, some of the biggest names in the game, how they cope with pressure, how they release pressure. I know you probably, I don't know whether you mentioned about people coming back after getting a bad call and throwing their bats and kicked around, etc. I don't know whether you mentioned that, but these kind of things happen. And if you've been able to be there, you understand the players a lot better, because players are, after all, human. They're like everybody else. They have their own, fears, worries, concerns, and to be able to actually see that, firsthand, to be able to sit with them maybe occasionally and not say a word, just be somebody who's just sitting there listening, taking the brunt and absorbing it, but not really, because sometimes people have to vent, people have to come out with their frustrations. To be able to do that in the change room must have been a fantastic experience. Not the most enjoyable of experiences, but surely an experience from which you would have understood the psyche of being an India cricketer. I don't think there is any other cricket team in the world which is under as much pressure, the pressure of expectations, like the Indian team. Because every match that the Indian team plays, the fans, the followers, not just in India, but the Indian cricket followers all over the world expect and want the Indian team to win. And we all know in sport that sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. But the pressure can be telling. And I think that is the pressure that the Indian team is currently experiencing, with everybody wanting them to win the Asia Cup, wanting them to win the World Cup, which is going to take place in a couple of in a month and a bit. But I think this is where we, as cricket followers, need to show a little bit more understanding, that there will be days that the team will not be able to play up to its potential, and let's keep our fingers crossed that if these days happen, they happen at the league stage and not at the knockout stage. And so therefore, with the cumulative prayers of all of us, I think we will be able to will and pray for India to win not just the Asia Cup but also the World Cup. We did, I think, as a nation, as a nation that follows sport, we did win 24 hours back or 48 hours back for Neeraj Chopra to win. I think all of us, we stayed up just to be able to watch, and we were praying. We had our fingers crossed, we had our hearts in our mouth, hoping that and praying that he would win, and he did. So this is what I request all of you to convey to other Indian sports lovers, to please do that, so that our team can go on to win both the Asia Cup. After the team landed, that was happening even during the time that we played. And the sort of the biggest instance of that I remember is when we went to Australia in 1977-78, and I didn't know at that stage. I was vice captain, but I had no idea what had that this had happened. But it was the last Test match we were playing at Adelaide, and I happened to be sitting next to Sir Don Bradman. This was in those days the host association would have a dinner for the teams on the eve of the match or on the third day, because the next day would be a rest day. And I happened to be sitting next to Sir Don Bradman, and Vasu Paranjpe, my other Union captain, had told me that if you ever get to sit or speak to Don Bradman, you're not going to miss anything, and you're going to report to me what you have written, what you've spoken to him, and what he has spoken to you, particularly what he has spoken to you. So I'm talking to him, and he was basically asking about amazingly about the Indian political situation. And again, I mean, he said that several times about the fact that he was, sorry that he hadn't come out to wave to the Indian, crowd that had gathered at the dockside in 1948 when the ship that was carrying the Australian team to England stopped over in Mumbai for a halt. So he was talking about that, and on my left, he was on my left, so Don. On his left was the president of the South Australian Cricket Association. On his left was Bishan Singh Bedi, the captain of the team. On his left was Paulie Umriga, who was manager of the team, and So, in the middle of that dinner, Paulie Umriga just leans back and says to me, "Hey Sunil, hey, one ne puchti ki Vinu ke mato." So basically, for those who don't understand this thing, what you are saying is, A1, I mean, I didn't even know that's what A1 meant. What you are saying is, ask Sir Don, how good was Vinu, like Vinu Mankar. How good was Vinu Mankar? So I'm like, and then before I could ask him anything, ask Sir Don anything, Sir Don turned to me and said, what language was that, Sonny? So I said, well, it's Gujarati, but the Parsis have a separate way, different way of speaking it. He said, yeah, because, at the start of the tour, when Paulie and I were discussing playing conditions, Paulie was talking to me in that language. And I had to tell him, Paulie, I don't understand that language. So, anyway.
Akash, I want to say a few things. You mentioned about the role of a manager. Now, I was manager on this tour in '92, and it was a bit embarrassing because I realized that the manager is actually in a way, the leader of the delegation. In terms of protocol, he comes ahead of the captain and everybody else. And the embarrassment was that here's Ajit Vadekar, but when it came to protocol, I sort of have a position different from him. For instance, I get a suite in a hotel, not Ajit, and only the captain and the manager would get suites. So I found it very embarrassing at times. Secondly, I realized that at the end of the tour, I'm supposed to write a report on the team and the players. So I have to write a report on, say, Azhar, Kapil, Ravi Shastri, and point out things like performance, discipline, commitment, hard work. Now, can you imagine somebody like me, who should not be doing this, writing a report on how good Kapil was in terms of discipline, or Azhar or something. But fortunately, I realized कि कुछ भी लिख दो, क्योंकि किसी ने पढ़ना तो है नहीं. So that's exactly what happened. I'm sure Professor is here. He's aware of this. He's been manager on many tours. So you do submit your report. It just goes into some file. Nobody reads it. So that saved me a lot of embarrassment.
See, now you know why Amrit can never write this sensational bestseller. Anybody else would have said, report mein maine ye kaha tha. But it's interesting, on that tour, the 3 Indians scored hundreds. On that tour of South Africa, 2 of them are in this room. Kapil Dev isn't. Praveen Amre is. And we played a media game where, much to the sadness of some other journalists, Sunil Gavaskar scored 100. Because he was in partnership with a journalist from Kolkata.
Gautam.
And all the other Kolkata journalists are now worried that this guy is going to get a scoop about batting with Sunil Gavaskar. So every 2 hours, someone would come out with drinks for Sunny, whether he wanted them or no. Someone would come running outside. They could do a story of taking drinks out. But Praveen was on that tour. Waited 5.5 hours for a spinner to come into bowl. I think he took 5.5 hours to make 80 runs and took about 3 minutes to go from 80 to 100 when the spinner came on.
Yeah, this was Durban. I think India was 38 for 4 on a green wicket, and Praveen on debut made 100. Fantastic. Praveen, where are you?
Yeah.
Well done.
I think it was one of the finest hundreds you can see. You're absolutely right. I think he really fought it out till 80, because they had a very good attack, fast bowling attack, tremendous attack, and then when Omar Henry came in, my God. I was thinking that even before Umar started his run-up, he was going down the pitch, even before he released the ball. He was so far down the pitch. I don't think he allowed him any chance to land the ball. But what a 100, what a wonderful innings. Well, I mean, so many years down the road, it's still up there in my, mind's eye as to the quality of that 100. Absolutely top class.
Sorry, another great 100 on that tour was Kapil Dev's. This was the Port Elizabeth Test match. India 31 for 6. Brett Schultz releasing rockets, and Kapil made 129 from there. I think it's one of the innings which is on par with his 175 maybe against Zimbabwe in the World Cup, but absolutely sensational innings.
I think I remember him hitting Alan Donald over the straight pavilion for a 6. So again, a terrific century.
That's about Pilcom. 1996, the World Cup came back to India after 1987. And I don't think everyone still is aware of all that happened to bring the World Cup back to India in 1996. I think we had a great chance of winning it as we did in 87, but that's a separate story. But there was so much that was happening around that 96 World Cup. There was India, Pakistan, was Sri Lanka involved as well? Not just Sri Lanka as well.
Sri Lanka too.
Of course, Sri Lanka as well.
Yeah. Well, that was decided. That was, I think, the first time the Asian bloc sort of got together as a group. India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka, 3 test-playing countries, because the World Cup was allotted through an election, and the members had to vote and decide where it went. So Mr. Dalmia, who was an expert at working numbers, realized that firstly we need these 3 with us, and then he approached all the associate members, all the Indians in various countries across the world, heading cricket bodies, were contacted, their support, sort of obtained in some manner or the other. And another great help was Zimbabwe, Mr. Chingoka, who became a lifelong friend of India, voted for India, I think, for 20 years after that. So a little bit of a struggle, but we got the World Cup. But there was an immediate challenge that the Pilcom had to pay a certain guarantee money to the ICC in order to retain the right to stage the World Cup. And there was no money. There was no money with the BCCI, Pakistan or Sri Lanka. So the way out was to sell television rights and get an advance, pay off ICC and get on with the job. Now there were tenders put out twice and there were no bidders for the television rights for the World Cup.
Why is Rahul laughing?
Yeah. So that's how desperate the situation was. And after 2 rounds of unsuccessful bidding, there comes Mark Mascarenhas suddenly, after the process is over, saying that I can make a bid. Now the problem was that how do you get somebody new in, because this is against all the normal protocols of a tender. So but ultimately, as there was no other person willing to put up the money, it went to Pilcom, and after a lot of discussion and back and forth, he agreed. And he guaranteed and got the rights to the World Cup for $10 million. I think that's less money, Rahul, now for one IPL game. So this was the entire World Cup, rights sold for $10 million or something. So that's actually quite a story in those days.
And of course, as happened in 87, so also in 96, it was a tournament that the Western media had said was doomed from the start, that these guys can't organize it very well. And to think that both 87 and 96 actually turned out to be fantastic tournaments. And I think that was around when the tide started to shift, when India started asserting its power from being a country that said yes to everything, but India started asserting its power to the extent that apparently Amrit was sent to Scotland Yard to check out the security arrangements in England. Come on, tell us.
Well, this is one of the most farcical stories you can talk about. Mr. Dalmia had this problem with England. He was very pissed off by their attitude, the superior attitude of trying to show India down at every stage. So he did 2-3 things. First, as soon as he became ICC chief, after having sorted out the Australia and England, and he actually put India on the global map in terms of ICC. He got respect for India. Other countries started fearing India in terms of ICC and things. Secondly, when it came to England, they had this habit of sending a team to inspect our test matches and venues and grounds and hotels. So he said, अब हमारे को इंग्लैंड जाना है, तो जाके चेक करके आओ. So Mr. Jyoti Bajpayee, who was the treasurer, and me was sent on a 2-week trip to England to check whether Lords was fit enough for us to play.
You should have said the slope is not good enough. नहीं कहते.
हाँ, slope को ठीक करो, इसको सीधा करो. No, but we actually, with a lot of embarrassment, checked Lords, dressing room.
As well as the World Cup in a month and a half. Thank you, Amrit, for asking me to come and release the book. I thought actually when you said it's going to be at the CCI, I thought, and the title of the book was Pitchside, that we might have to go to the middle of the pitch and release the book over there in the middle of the pitch. But I think this is a far more congenial atmosphere here to be able to meet up with so many people. Also, of course, fortunately, the CCI doesn't have the kind of restrictions that the home of English cricket has, where nobody can go on the grass. You've got a picture in that keep off the grass kind of, you've got a picture in that say keep off the grass. So that doesn't happen. But that's because we love our cricket, we love our sport, and we're also fortunate to have people like Amrit who have been with Indian cricket. They've had a role to play with Indian cricket. I don't think, apart from Fateh Singh Rao Gaikwad, there's been a younger manager of the Indian team. It's easier to relate to somebody who you can be on first name terms with because of, there's not much of an age gap. And I think that is what Amrit brought to the managership of the Indian team. I'm sure the players would have been very happy to be able to, come to you. Otherwise, there's always just a little bit of a distance that youngsters keep out of respect, maybe not out of respect for, of the senior players. But I think Amrit brought a different role to the Indian managership, and he's performed it absolutely brilliantly. So starting from a person who probably didn't know whether the pitch was wet or not in Sydney, to writing a book, Pitchside. Oh, so it's a great, wonderful turnaround. I want to congratulate you on the book. I want to wish you all the very best. I hope this is read by many people, because I think this is, certainly from whatever I've read so far, this is a book worth reading. One or two inaccuracies over there, but that is for later. Something to do about the number of shoes that I have. I read that. That is 100%, 100, 200, 1000% totally inaccurate. So don't believe everything that that you read about me. But thank you all. I don't want to keep you away from getting hold of the book. And thank you all for coming here. Thanks so much. And Amrit, all the best.
See, the problem with generating large numbers is whether you look at number of test hundreds, whether you look at number of test matches, whether you look at